Prasad, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, a very good morning to all of you. It is both an honor and a true pleasure to welcome you to this highly anticipated event. My name is Kesha Malik, and I have the privilege of serving as your MC for today. I currently serve as the head girl of the Royal College of Cupid. Yes, the head girl, a title that still raises a few eyebrows, especially among the alumni who remember when RCC was strictly boys only. As part of the first batch of girls to be admitted, I guess you could say, we came, we saw, and well, we are still conquering. So thank you for being part of this special moment. And with that said, allow me the pleasure of introducing someone equally capable and charming, my co-MC for this event, Akshay. Akshay, would you please?
Thank you, Kesha. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Akshay Partager, and I am proud to serve as the Vice Head Boy of the Royal College of VIDI. I am both extremely honored and delighted to be your co-MC along with Kesha for today. Now, without further ado, I'll pass the stage to Kesha, who will give you some insights on the importance of this event. Thank you.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this special occasion, the official launch of VENI, VIDI, VICI, 2 centuries of nation building. Today, we are not just unveiling a book, we are celebrating a legacy. This event marks the recognition of over 2 centuries of dedication to education, leadership, and nation building. The Royal Colleges have shaped generations, and through this publication, we pay tribute to the countless individuals who have carried this legacy forward. This launch is a moment to reflect on the impact these institutions have had on our society, not just in the realms of academics, but in cultivating the values and character that continue to shape Mauritius. It is also a celebration of identity, history, and resilience. We hope that today's event serves not only as a tribute to the past, but as an inspiration for the future. With that, I'll hand over to Akshay, who will walk us through the background of the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Kesha. This remarkable book retraces the proud origins and evolution of the Royal Colleges, which have stood as pillars of democratized education in Mauritius. From their colonial roots to the present day, the Royal Colleges have shaped generations of leaders, prime ministers, doctors, engineers, academics, and many more, through a strong tradition of excellence, character, and holistic development. It captures not only the historical journeys of these prestigious institutions, but also the stories, values, and talents that make up their rich cultural legacy. Truly a tribute to 2 centuries of nation building through education. I am pleased to introduce one of the co-authors of this book, Professor Serge Rivière. In 1965, he was announced a laureate of the Royal College of Cupid on the art side. He completed a Master of Arts at Aberdeen University in 1970, a postgraduate MA at McMaster University in 1971, a PhD at Glasgow University in 1980, and a Diploma of Education at Monash University in 1982. He has lectured on French literature in many countries from 1970 to 2025, including France, Australia, Canada, and Mauritius. Awarded the title of Professor Emeritus of French at the University of Limerick in Ireland, Professor Serge Rivière was also decorated by the French government as a Chevalier de l'Ordre des Palmes Académiques in 2005. He has also published over 30 books and many articles in English and French. May I please invite Professor Serge Rivière to the stage.
Dr. the Honorable Navin Chandra Ramgoolam, Prime Minister of Mauritius, Dr. the Honorable Mahen Ganga Persad, Minister of Education and Human Resource, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. Let me say what a great pleasure it is for me to be here today and participate in this symbolic event. Allow me to start my address by evoking both the sentiments and the inspirational words of my former rector, H.B. Bullen, rightly considered, in my view, to be the first modern headmaster in the history of the Royal College, a great leader of men and boys. He wrote in the RCC magazine of 1962 for us students, "There is one particular thing which I want to speak of here, and that is the concept of loyalty to and pride in your school. You should be proud of your school, not ashamed to wear the Royal College badge." Those words echoed in my mind wherever I went in the world. In January 1959, I set out on a long and exciting journey of discovery and self-discovery. That voyage has led me to distant lands. Yet, always, I came back intellectually at least and spiritually to the alma mater, my true protagonist in this book. Alma mater, for those who have forgotten their Latin, means nourishing mother. How many of us have been nourished among the alumni today? And the alumni scattered around the world. And here I want to make it clear that I'm talking about both Royal Colleges, not just RCC. As I look back now in the autumn of my life, though not in the winter of discontent, I realize that a small span of my life of 7 years prepared me well for the lifetime of travel and work on 5 continents. Such was the integrity of the holistic education we received at the Royal College, dispensed by many erudite, caring pedagogues who are too numerous to be named here. At a formal dinner on a July evening in 1966 in the Robert Dugnaville Hall, on the very night when England last won the World Cup with the likes of Bobby Moore and Jeff Hurst, the rector H.B. Bullen took it upon himself to teach us the etiquette of social behavior. How to use your forks and knives, how to use your spoons, which glass goes with brandy, which glass with wine. How useful this was for the rest of my life. Now at least I don't drink brandy out of a glass wine. This is the real role of education, which means educare, leading out, bringing forth the inner talent of young people. For us, researchers and writers involved in the preparation of VENI, VIDI, VICI, there was little need to be motivated. It was simply a matter of paying homage to the grand old lady, a national heritage. For me, it was a sense of duty, un devoir de mémoire, but also the feeling with the assise of education coming up, that in a way, by looking back, I was looking forward. Let us not forget the axiom of Lord Bolingbroke. History is philosophy teaching by examples. History is philosophy teaching by examples. As I look back at the history of the Royal College, I draw some examples and I put these examples on the table. we looked at the evolution of the system of education in Mauritius, it was quite clear that through the education acts in the 20th century, Mauritius was moving forward, but the school, the Royal College, was adapting constantly to the new emerging talents and the changing socio-economic system in the world. So, philosophy of education. It became obvious in the course of our research that, as the Prime Minister will no doubt point out, as my teachers of mathematics especially wrote on my assignments, there is room for improvement. I was rather poor in mathematics, which is why I chose Latin and Greek. But I made progress. We must make provision for a holistic education, a new brand that will ensure in the years to come that no child is left behind. I like those words. It must be a productive system that will inculcate in students three things: savoir, knowledge, savoir-faire, social grace and diplomacy, and savoir-être, interpersonal skills. Savoir-être has been neglected recently. Être, to live, to be yourself, to live your life to the full. We have forgotten the emotional well-being of our children by sending them, and this is an important point of mine, sending them to endless private tuition sessions. So much so that they do not have time for music, drama, sport even. Focusing on their academic performance, thereby neglecting their very inner selves, their souls, and the practical skills required in a global economy. Nature, yes, through nurture, should be given a chance to blossom, but through extracurricular activities, both within and outside the school. I am glad the Assises de l'Éducation stress the need for extracurricular activities. In the decades where I attended the Royal College, education was what it should be. In the words of Jean-Jacques Rousseau in Émile, a development from within, an expansion of natural powers. There was a wealth of extracurricular activities: drama, music, societies, clubs, arts, crafts, all combined with academic progress. You will find this in the new book. All the alumni refer to what they learned when teaching had stopped outside the classroom. Today, in a symbolic gesture, in the transmission of values and heritage, I am pleased to hand over the flambeau, the baton, to the young generation. As an older alumnus, I realize there is much more to come. I believe with the proper funding guidance of government that we can move towards a truly inclusive education system. As Shakespeare wrote in The Tempest, guys, what's past is past. This is the prologue to the play. You are the main actors, the generation to come. So let the play begin. But before the play begins, may I express my personal thanks to members of my research teams. They know who they are in the acknowledgements. I'd like to thank also Amaresh, without whose vision, organizational skills, and real creative flair, this launch would not have happened in the same way. Above all, I'd like to thank you for being here and mark this event in some significant way. Thank you for your attention, and long live the Royal Colleges.
Thank you very much, Professor Amelia, for your insightful words and for opening this launch with such depth and meaning. It is now my great pleasure to introduce the second co-author of this remarkable book, Amaresh Ramlagan. Amaresh Ramlagan brings with him over 2 decades of expertise in the fields of marketing, communications, and leadership. He currently leads TCA as CEO, and is also the founder of the Corporate Leadership Center. His work has consistently focused on empowering people and organizations to reach their full potential. Amaresh Ramlagan has also been awarded a professional doctorate in global leadership and management from the European International University, Paris. As alumnus of Royal College of Cupid, Dr. Ramlagan has remained closely connected to the institution for years of active involvement, including as a past president of the RCC Alumni Association. Beyond his professional achievements, he also serves as the chairperson of the Mauritius Broadcasting Corporation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Amaresh Ramlagan on stage.
Minister of Education, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Thank you all for being here for the launch of VENI, VICI, over 2 centuries of nation building. At the outset, please allow me to thank my co-author, Professor Serge Rivière, with whom it has been both a great pleasure and a privilege to work on this book. Serge and I are not at our first attempt, because 10 years back we collaborated with the association on a commemorative magazine to mark the 100 years of the building of RCC, which was 100 years old. Working with Serge has always been a nice experience, although we are from different backgrounds, and when it comes to rigor, methodology, foresight, and sagesse, being from a different school, it's been a great collaborative experience. Furthermore, I was pleasantly surprised, because when I proposed to Serge the title of VENI, VIDI, VICI, inspired from Julius Caesar, he immediately agreed. On a lighter note, and the media doesn't have to quote me, the book was initially planned to be launched in November last year, and after hearing the title VENI, VIDI, VICI, someone told me that the title of the book was coined in anticipation to the comeback in the power of the So to which I replied, to stay true to our version folklore and humor, basically le livre VENI, VIDI, VICI. On a more serious note, the title of the book and the book itself is a tribute. First, VENI, VIDI, VICI represents a collective triumph. It is not just the story of one person. It is the story of generations who came to the school, VENI, absorbed its values and culture, VIDI, and went on to lead, shape, and elevate our nation, VICI. VENI, VIDI, VICI is a timeless legacy of generations of students who arrived at the Royal Colleges with promise, were molded by it, and went on to conquer the world, be it politically, academically, professionally, or culturally. Secondly, VENI, VIDI, VICI also focuses on the journey of the institution itself, of both Royal Colleges, a journey of excellence. The Royal College, founded with a mission, VENI, growing through challenges, VIDI, and emerging as a beacon of academic and cultural excellence, VICI. The Royal College itself could therefore be portrayed as a conqueror of in the educational landscape, standing the test of time, influencing society, and creating history. Finally, VENI VIDI VICI is also a tribute to legacy builders. It honors our unsung heroes, rectors, students, teachers, staff, administrators, whose contributions and dedication made this 2-century-long success possible. We do hope, Serge and myself, that you will enjoy the book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amara Chandlagan, for those meaningful words and for your contribution to preserving the legacy of the Royal Colleges for this important work. Ladies and gentlemen, we are deeply honored to have among us today a distinguished guest, Dr. the Honorable Navin Chandra-Rambulan, GCSK, FRCP, Prime Minister of the Republic of Mauritius. As an esteemed alumnus of the Royal College of Cupid and a key figure in our nation's history, his presence here today adds tremendous significance to this event. May I now invite Dr. the Honorable Navin Chandra-Rambulan to deliver his address.
The Honorable Minister of Education and Human Resources, Professor Serge Rivière, Dr. Maurice Info, and distinguished guests. You know, when I hear that young lady giving the introduction, it reminds me of an American journalist who came to interview me after my victory in 1995. And the last question he asked me was, he said, Prime Minister, you've been, first you were a doctor, then you became a lawyer, and now you're Prime Minister. What next? So I quoted what former Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli said about politics. He said, to climb up to the top of the pole, it's a greasy pole. You keep slipping down. And your own people will pull you down as well. But when eventually you reach the top of the greasy pole, the only way is down. There's no other way. And this is what happened to me in 2000. I'm truly delighted to be here to join you today for the launch of this book, VENI VIDI VICI. Participating in such an event, you know, sometimes we have to go to functions and say, oh my God, I have to make a speech, I have to do this, I have to do that. But this event, I was truly delighted to come. Why? Because it reminds me of the pleasant, it's a feeling of nostalgia when you see your alma mater here. We were together. It's pleasant memories. I also think, every time I pass next to the Royal College of Cupid, I think of my time that what I did. I won't tell you everything I did, but I remember Mr. Bulan, as Professor Rivière just said, his mere presence, he comes in the class. His mere presence with his piercing eyes would fear you. Yeah? I also remember Mr. Moringu too. We used to call him Mr. Poto, because he used to hit you with his knuckles on your head. And we had marvelous teachers. I'm glad Professor Serge Rivière mentioned a few. I want to mention as well, because we must be grateful. I think I am what I am today because of those teachers. I tell you, like you mentioned, Georges Spitalinwell. He was an English and English literature teacher. Such an erudite teacher. I've never felt that again. That you actually want to go in his class. Normally children want to run away from class. You want to go in his class. I remember he had a book he was reading back in this week called Supertime. I think by Davis, if I'm not mistaken. Then there was Daniel Kelly. He was a teacher of French and Latin. And he took great pains to make us pronounce the French words. Thanks to him, I got actually second prize, not first, in Latin, in Form 4. Then there was Mr. Jawair. he was teaching physics. We called him Tilapia because he was short. Then there was Mr. Wanuchi. I decorated him afterwards. You know Mr. Wanuchi was a professor of mathematics. When I had to choose between science and classical at the time, I had usually good marks in Latin, in English literature and all this. But I chose science. I chose science because I thought at the time, you know, when you're young, you don't think, as you should perhaps be thinking. I thought Russia had just sent a satellite in space called Sputnik. And I said, what am I going to do with that? Science is over before. So I chose science, but I didn't know you had to have a slip signed by your parents. I think some of you must have gone through this. So all my friends chose science. So afterwards, when I got the slip, said you must have your parents to sign. I took it to my father. I said, what? You get 7 prizes in Latin. You get good marks in English, in literature, and you choose science. I can't say I was average probably. And he threw the piece of paper and said, go and change. I think some of you know me by now. I didn't change. I thought I'd imitate the signature of my father. You sure? And I gave it to Mr. Guru. And he said, hey, Buddha, see, I started with it. Oh, but I didn't do it properly. See, I started with it. I said, yes, if you don't believe me, go and read him. I knew he wouldn't dare read. And, but I was talking about someone who cheated. You know, I don't know, maybe it's the way people are. I always like to do what is more difficult. That is why I chose science. But when I was in lower 6, I chose to do additional maths. I can't say I was that good in math, but I chose additional maths. And when I started the course, I was lost. And had it not been for Mr. Waluchi, I don't think I would have passed additional maths. He was really dedicated and made me pass. There's another professor of math, I remember, I think his name was Robert Jr. Bill. They would make you think. You know what he did, Jr. Bill, in the class? He came up, he drew a clock on the blackboard. And then he said, how many of you have watches? Some of us had, some of us didn't. And he said, what is more accurate, your watch or this clock on the board? We want our watches. He said, no, it's the clock which I've drawn here which is more accurate. Why? Because twice a day is going to give you the exact time. Your watch will never give you the exact time. I remember Mr. Asarabe, who taught biology. Really talented. I think he went to Australia afterwards. And then there was I'm thinking of a few, Mr. Amamuda, history teacher. He made you as if you looked at the time you were reading. When he was teaching us about Henry VIII and his, 8 wives, I think, you felt what it was like. These were the kind of teachers that we had. And they formed our characters, our formative years. This is the year that you will become what you will become. You know, SSR also referred to his teachers. In one of his biographies called Our Struggle, he refers to them. And I want to quote what he said. Look what he said. This was in the 1915, around that time. He said the British had created a few institutions in Mauritius modeled after the best British ones. but it was the Royal College which served the people most, with its staff of Oxford, Cambridge and London. They were educated and trained teachers. They were competent. They were experienced. They were dedicated to the cause of education. I just said, Professor Gigi also said about our teachers who were very dedicated. But look what SSR said, because it's pertinent for what you said about tuition. He mentioned two of his teachers. He said, I was lucky enough to have had as teacher Reverend Fowler, who taught English. He instilled in me a deep and lifelong love for the English language and literature. He had a sense of fairness, tolerance, impartiality, and justice, values which I have adopted. But he also remembered his chemistry teacher, called Mr. Howard. And this is what he said. He was painstaking, honest, disapproving of the common practice of giving private tuition. And SSR had approached him one day for private tuition. And you know what he said? He said, I can't teach you any more than I've taught you in class. I will be stealing your father's money. What I teach you in class is what I would have taught you anyway. So you can judge for yourself what kind of teachers the Royal College of Quebec, and I'm sure Royal College of Port Louis too, which came later. But these educators, they as if lit the candle of curiosity and this love for knowledge in the hearts and minds of the students. That's how we felt. Kindling a passion for learning and lighting that candle that they gave freely all their as if energy and life for the students. Totally dedicated and impartial. You know the founding father of Turkey, Kemal Atatürk. This is how he described his own teachers. He said a great teacher is like a candle, consuming himself to light the way for others. It's a great description. I think we do not give enough credit to our teachers. And yet they're so crucial, especially in our formative years. So this is why we must pay tribute to those who have held in trust the stewardship of our college for these past 200 years. I know there's a new rector who was also a student, I believe, from the Royal College. I'm sure he's keeping the level that should be kept. Not only to impart knowledge, but to give the essential values of life. This forms your character. There is nothing more important than the intellectual and moral formation of our young people. Talent, eagerness to learn and to excel, youthful energy, our people have in abundance. These two young people, we have plenty of them, I'm sure. But our nation draws on the strength of so many races, so many cultures, so many religions, that we have no shortage of natural abilities. But natural abilities, as the great philosopher and statesman Francis Bacon said, natural abilities are like natural plants. They need pruning by study. This is what we need. Education remains the bedrock of our nation's progress, and it is essential for us in forging our national destiny. SSR, when I think about it, he must have had it. I don't know, he could see very far, the man of vision. How is it in the 90s? People don't know this. People think we got free education in 1977. He announced it in 1976. During the press brief prior to the election, my friend Amini Dog, I'm sure, must have campaigned that this is a electoral bribe. But in fact, he wanted to have free education in the late 1950s. And the governor at the time, the British governor, said, no, it's not possible people will start fighting and speak about politics in schools. This is what he said. So it was only in 1977 that it became a reality. But you can also say, why didn't he do it when we got independence in 1968? For precisely the reason that we're having today. There was no money in the coffers. You can't do everything you want to do when you don't have the means to do it. At the time, Mauritius was a monocrop economy. Two Nobel laureates in economics, it mustn't be, what did they say? That Mauritius is doomed. It is bound to fail. It has no hope of survival because it produces only sugar and a growing population, high unemployment, and it was subject to the vagaries of cyclones and droughts, which affected our sugar plantations. But as I saw in this time, I must tell you something, even in 1970, I witnessed this, even in 1976, when he was wanted to have free education, many people were against. I remember reading an article, an editorial in Le Mauricien, my friend Lindsay will know this, by Henri Masson, who could write beautifully and convincingly. I was a doctor already, but I thought maybe he was right, because in that article he said, Sassim Sakala, by giving free education, is trying to bankrupt this country. We can't afford it. So I went and asked my dad, you really took the right decision by giving free education? He said, why are you asking me? I said, I read what Henri Masson was reading. And many people were criticizing me. He said, you know, these people don't have vision. They're looking at it in terms of rupees and cents. This is what will make Mauritius survive. And I want the people of Mauritius to be able to think for themselves. Don't believe everything you read. Today on the social media, so many lies on things. We have to use our head and try to see. So in hindsight, he was good. Somebody asked him, I remember, came from Goodlands, your constituency, and said to him, but you doing all this? But he was going to paint these buildings. Where would you get the teachers from? I remember he often said it. He said, what I want to do is to replace an empty mind with an open one. It's a great saying. I would apologize all the crucibles in which character and aspirations of generations of fashioned or nurtured and are inspired. This is why I have profound respect for those whose calling is to educate the young, and I cherish. I hope you did the same. I don't know. At the time, there were no girls in the college, just boys. And but I cherish the great traditions exemplified by Royal College at the time. And in liberal education, we had a liberal education, which is fundamental if you want to encourage critical thinking and good judgment. But Bacon, I quote Bacon, Francis Bacon again, what he said. He said, read not to contradict and confute, nor to believe or take for granted, nor to find thought and discourse, but to weigh and consider. This is the true end of education, to equip and train the mind for rigorous discernment and judgment in the experiences and tasks we must face in life. To teach us to aim higher and choose the noble path, to an ignoble one, honorable path to a dishonorable one. That is why we must endeavor to encourage liberal education. I've said in the campaign that I want to encourage humanity. People should also have leisure. Children can't be just reading and going for private tuition. This is not the way forward. In Canada, private tuition is not allowed. And the Canadians do very well. In New Zealand, it's the same. But here, everybody thinks I have to give a push to the child. And this is what's happening. In fact, education is not free because you have to pay for the tuition. But the liberal education is very important. You know, the very Scottish writer who was also a distinguished and famous lawyer, Sir Walter Scott. One day, a client came to his chambers. I think he had a very serious problem, and he came to see him because he was a great lawyer. They asked him to wait in the library. And while he was waiting, he looked around and he saw books. The whole wall was full of books. And then he was asked to come in to meet the great man, Sir Walter Scott. And he said to him, I think I made a mistake. So Walter said, why? He said, when I was waiting for you, I looked at your library. I saw so many books, but they were on science, on philosophy, on literature, classical books. But I didn't see one legal, not one. And you know what's Walter Scott replied? He said, very true, but you can imagine that after years of patient study and practice, I've already learned the methods and principles of the law. But they have to teach me. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have reached that position. But I must tell you something. If you read just legal books because you're a lawyer, you will indeed you may become a fine technician. But if you read and resort what these books you saw in the library teach you, you can venture to be an architect. Because you will have a more open mind. That is why this new volume that shows us what is liberal, the spirit of liberal education, has found already in welcoming home. And we keep, sometimes we don't realize, all of us, either we were students there, or else indirectly, felt the influence, because the influence on our nation of this great college with its unparalleled history and tradition has stretched down the centuries. And the RCC has stood the test of time. It has produced 3 prime ministers out of 5. And lots of ministers, doctors, lawyers, lots of people who are now shining in different posts. And at the true grace of learning, since its establishment, I think in 1880, the Royal College has welcomed students of all backgrounds and communities. An example, some years ago, with a small boy, he had only one eye. He came from poor parents at the time. He was living in Belleville, but he managed to go to the Royal College of Living. It just shows. Even from his early days, it was like Dr. as Governor Falk said, students throughout the region, making Mauritius a center for liberal education. And through its large alumni network, both at home and abroad, the Royal College continues to serve the values of liberal education we receive here and stand for the qualities that will best serve our nation, because they believe in what we were taught. I mean, look at it. It has produced 15 laureates last year. This stands as a testament of its distinguished legacy of excellence. I like to think that this livre VENI, VICI, I came, I saw, I conquered, historically attributed to Julius Caesar. It brings before our minds the generations of young and eager students who arrive at the gates of learning, and they can see the wide and inexhaustible horizon in front of them, which will give them a liberal access, conquer the chosen fields of hard work, by hard work and discipline. Malcolm Richard said he was also at the Royal College of Review. He aptly described RCC as un vrai laboratoire humain, a crucible of a larger, complex society in which this great Mauritian experience, in which different cultures, religions, languages meet to find ways of working and living together and sharing a national identity. But again, I want to emphasize, it's the liberal education that is essential. We want to steer the college's education towards that. You know, there is a great example of a former Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States called Mr. Justice Frank Hutton. He was on the bench of the Supreme Court. And look at this, a young girl, age 12 if I remember well, 12 years old, writes to the judge in the Supreme Court of the United States, writes him a letter to ask for his advice on law studies. 12-year-old girl. And what is more remarkable is that the judge, senior judge, replies to her. And this is what he said in his reply. He said, no one can be a truly competent lawyer unless he's a cultivated man or woman. And the best way to prepare for the law is to come to the study of the law as a well-read person. And this alone, thus alone, one can acquire the capacity to use the English language on paper, in speech, and it gives you the habits of clear thinking. And then he said, this only a truly liberal education can give you. And he said, no less important for a lawyer is the cultivation of the imaginative faculties, by reading poetry, by seeing great paintings, by listening to great music. This is precisely what we are saying. Therefore, as we celebrate this rich history and remarkable contribution of the RCC, it seems appropriate for me to say a few words about the future of education. Only a few words. I know I've spoken probably too long. We're at a crucial time. What do we have in Mauritius? We don't have diamond or oil or gold. What we have is our human capital. That's the only resource that we have. Really, our resource that we have is our people. This is why we must reform education. And I'm glad the Honorable Minister of Education is going at it the right way. We must uphold the fundamental principles of liberal education and cherish meritocracy and non-discrimination. I must say, despite the remarkable strides we've made since independence, 1968, we have not yet accomplished a system that works for all our young people. Too many children fail through the cracks of the mainstream education. That is why we say education is for the preparation for life. There's a growing mismatch, we all know this, we've been saying it for years, between the skills imparted in schools and those demanded by the economy. And to address these deficiencies, my government is committed to supplementing our current education approach with the éducation à visage humain. This vision ensures that all Mauritian children, regardless of background, are given the opportunity to develop their unique creative talents so that no child is left behind. This is what is important. I'm glad that we are at the threshold of a major revolution, and I'm glad the Minister has organized recently the Assises de l'Éducation, which is the first, as far as I remember, but maybe there were others. Wide consultations were held to look at whatever we need to do. But among other things, we have to teach the creative arts, music. I remember when I was at the Bourgeois building, there was a lady called Mrs. Dulcie who was teaching us music. I don't know whether this is there anymore. Probably not. Drama, as you mentioned. So, yeah. Suppose the creative arts. Already our initiative to reintroduce free credits for the grade 12 system is very important. I'm glad we did it because you can't leave children by the side. And you have lead developers, we all know this. So you must give them an opportunity. One other thing I haven't discussed this with Honorable Minister, we must give autonomy to the rectors. It cannot be that the ministry reads and transfers this rector from that rector because some people have said something. That is not all. The rector must have autonomy to run the school, even the schools. And the ministry mustn't interfere. Nothing to do with that. If we don't get results, then we transfer the rector. But if you're getting results, Honorable Gangapasan himself is an example. I didn't know him at all. And then I like to look at the figures, results. And I saw the Dominant Tabo Institute, which is in number 5. Very bad results. I said, why is it? The Mauritian children, but why are they getting bad results? And then I checked, and when we were working, I can't remember, they had some good results. And released in the north. I said, get him transferred to that. Let's see whether they can change this. And believe it or not, within the first year, if I'm not mistaken, he produced 2 laureates. What does it mean? And there was no difference. Nobody from the Ministry of Education said to him, you must transfer this teacher, you must do this or that. No. He was given autonomy and he produced results. That is very important. So, the dawn, in taking these measures, as Sir Francis Bacon, I want to quote it again, look what he said. He said, we rise to great heights by a winding staircase of small steps. And to achieve anything in life, you have to have discipline, hard work, rigor, which has characterized the Royal College. Nobody will get any chance. I had to do extra work because I was standing outside near the statue. If you're, I'm sure and Lindsay also will remember, we were given to put uniforms. If the uniform, the trousers were too short, because you know what young people are like, I want to show our muscles. We were sent home. It has to be so many inches. This discipline is very important. And we have in our government program, if you get a chance to read it, A Bridge to the Future. We seek to meet this aspiration and wish of the people for shaping a new destiny for our country. And we have underpinned the national goals, economic efficiency, social justice, discipline, and unity. The last election was on 2 topics, unity and liberty. People wanted to be free. Totally acceptable what happened. Watching people spying on people, inacceptable. But as we strive to strengthen the sinews of our nation and prepare ourselves for our future, the sound education will remain the crucial foundation of our nation's progress. At the dawn of this new era in the development of our country, let us, as we have done on so many occasions since independence, unleash the pent-up forces of all Mauritians. The ingenuity and the collective wisdom of our people for the nation's future. I'm sure that our nation's brightest days are still ahead of us. True to its fine tradition in fashioning the path ahead, the pupils, the students of the Royal College will continue to be in the vanguard of the service of our readers.